Good morning again. My topic today is dying to be me. Now, the title came about because about a year ago, a friend of our family passed away. And he was a musician, he's known worldwide. And he loved Prince. And so when they did his celebration, they played the song, I Would Die For You. And so I'm like going crazy. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. Not realizing Prince wrote the song about Christ, dying. Didn't know that. So, but the song had been just playing in the back of my mind. And so they had another celebration this spring, and they played the song again. And so I was like, why is this song working me the way that it is? So ultimately, when I was asked to come up with a title for today, thinking about the theme this month, movement, how do we get ourselves moving? And I was like, well, what is it for me? And I kept getting dying to be me. Some of you may have heard of Anita Murjani. There's a book she wrote called Dying to Be Me. And she just talks about her experience. She was diagnosed with cancer, and she was pretty much on her deathbed. And she had this near-death experience where she experienced source energy. And so in her having the experience, she realized that she had been repressing all the feelings and all the things that she truly wanted to do and how she wanted to show up, because she was worried about everybody else, what they were thinking and what they wanted of her. And so for me, I was like, well, I can identify with that. The good thing is I don't have to have a near-death experience to come to the same realization. So before I get started, I want to talk about death and dying for a second. It's a natural part of life. If you look at nature, like everything, like the trees, each year they're releasing and losing. And then the flowers and new leaves come back in the spring. And then when I think about our bodies are constantly losing cells that are no longer needed and generating new ones. And so we have a new body, every 7 years, I think? But then I think about the seed. A seed is just a seed if it stays a seed. But if it releases the identity of a seed and allows itself to be planted or buried and die, then we get a tree or we get a plant. There's new life. So in the book, she talks about the ego and the purpose of the ego. There we go. So she says the ego is the part of us that feels separate from others and the universe. It's ultimately that part of us that tries to keep us safe. It's rooted in fear, separation, and individuality. The only thing is, it tends to keep us in limitation. It keeps us stuck sometimes if we allow it to control us. And this makes me think of the movie Inside Out 2. If you haven't gone to see it, go see it. It's a very good movie. It's well done. Very well done. But while the ego has a necessary function, she emphasizes that it often leads to limitations and suffering when it dominates our lives. And it's key that we understand and accept the self-limitations and that we impose them on ourselves. With our ego, well, I'll speak for myself. Who do you think you are? I'm not good enough. Oh, I could never wear that. There's so much going on, and it's based in fear, and it's based in lack, not enoughness, plenty of self-doubts. And as you become acquainted with the resistance patterns and how the ego expresses, it allows you to really be aware of how you stay stuck or you don't move on. For example, I might procrastinate. I might allow myself to be distracted. And it's just a way that my ego is trying to stay alive when I've decided that I want to change or be different. So the time comes when I have to surrender. I have to surrender the ego. Now, the ego gets a bad rep. It's not all bad. It's actually, well, I would say mine is my friend now. Because it has a purpose. It's a part of me knowing who I am. It allows me to get to know myself separate from other people and the environment around me. In the book, she says, when I was willing to let go of what I thought was expected of me and be totally myself, my life became an adventure. Surrendering is very important. That's where we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We sit with the stuff, the icky stuff, all the feelings, all the fears, all the thoughts, all the false beliefs, and allowing it to just be there without judgment, having compassion for ourselves, forgiving ourselves if we believed a lie that somebody said. And in that surrender, we let go of the need to control. And at the end, it boils down to acknowledging the ego while not letting it control us. And then we have a deeper understanding of who we are and how to move through the limitations and the resistance. Okay, so now we've identified limitations and the influence of the ego, right? Now what? Make a different choice. And then keep choosing that new choice over and over and over again. It sounds simple, but hear me out. In connecting with our true selves, we elevate. We level up. There's a sister on Instagram, her name is Zen Oasis. She says, every time we allow ourselves to elevate and grow, we die a little bit, meaning parts of our ego die. This is when we experience resistance. The more we allow the parts of us to go, the parts we no longer need, the parts that no longer serve us, the ego dies more and more. And we get to experience something new. We get to be new. The only thing is, as we level up, something comes back around. The ego is still there. It's like, all right, I let you put me out of my comfort zone the last time, but we ain't doing it again. And so you stay with it. And you allow yourself to move through this next level of elevation. Embracing who we truly are and practicing self-love are crucial for the transcending of limitations. We're no longer preoccupied by the false beliefs, not feeling good enough, and definitely other people's expectations. And what I realized just about my own journey, the more I love myself, the more I allow myself to receive and experience the good things in life. And so in the book, she gives practical steps on how to surrender and then how to move through it and things. But I'm going to give you an example. The example is, I want to live a healthier life. So I'm going to start going to the gym. I'm going to eat healthy. The pattern was I was chilling, laying on the couch, watching TV and eating Cheetos. But my elevated self is desiring to go to the gym and live a healthier life. But when I go to the gym, it's important that I take that healthy attitude with me, that new lifestyle with me, and allow the gym and that healthy lifestyle to change me versus justify behaviors. I remember going through a time period where it was like, oh, I worked out today, so I can have that piece of cheesecake. Versus, I went to the gym today, so I'm not going to ruin it by eating that piece of cheesecake. Or I decided to be healthy, so I'm going to choose a piece of fruit. But as I move through whatever issue it is, the resistance is going to always be there. And so it's an ongoing process to be with it, to have that compassion, to be forgiving, to allow myself to be vulnerable with myself, and not only experience all of that icky stuff, but to move to something new and allow myself to experience something good, something better. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes, until one day you wake up and it's a new habit. Anita says, now when our ego is turned up high, working in tandem with our conscious awareness, knob, like a knob, the ego becomes a beneficial tool because it helps us identify with and connect to our own individuality. She goes on to say it allows us to differentiate our own being, emotions, feelings, needs, and desires from those of others, clarifying who we are in contrast to the external world. This moves us into authenticity. The more we go through this process and release the stuff that is not our true selves, that is the light, that is God, the love, that is the universe, that self-givingness of life, the more we allow that to come forward, we allow ourselves to show up authentically and unapologetically. We go beyond the constructs of the ego. This is important when it comes to personal transformation and the significance of having that self-love and acceptance is very key in transcending the ego and allowing it to be your partner. I watched an interview of her speaking, and she was just talking about how she was so afraid of disappointing all the people around her, of disappointing her culture. But she was willing to die instead because she said she was repressing herself so much, her body was responding. It was fighting back like, no, this isn't the truth of who we are. Let all of that go. Who are we? That's not it. And so she said it was a wake-up call for her. And what I have learned about authenticity is with authenticity comes inspired action. When I'm being my full self, I get these intuitive hits, or I get these desires where it's like, oh, I may want to paint today. I feel like dancing. I feel like singing. Whatever that is, it allows me to allow God to express as me. I like to say God in drag. So I want to talk about inspired action. There's a difference between inspired action and reactive action. Inspired action comes from a place of, what would I love? A place of curiosity. Whereas reactive action, ultimately, it's an action that's a reaction of something else. So, for example, the gym scenario I said, an inspired action would be, oh, I want to go to the gym. I just want to be healthy. I want to be fit. A reactive way would be, I went to the doctor and I got a diagnosis. He said I need to exercise, so now I'm going to the gym. That's different. But when we get clear about what it is we want to experience, clear about what we love, clear about who we are authentically, it allows us to move into a place of power. Being myself allows the wholeness of my unique magnificence to draw me in those directions most beneficial to me and to all others. That's not just for her. That's for all of us. And as you start to find your way back, your authentic self, everything changes. Life is very different. And so we let go of the ego. We surrender all of that, the power and control that the ego used to have. So I talked about, the ego and the limitations, moving through it, how we move through it. And I'm going to close with this. So I mentioned earlier that the song, I Would Die For You, kept coming to me. And the dying to be me kept it was like, what is this? And I realized in doing this talk that it's because 10 years ago, I made the decision to pursue ministry. And in that decision, I realized a lot of resistance come up. and I noticed that there was this back and forth conversation. I had said yes, but I wasn't all the way in. So I went to a spiritual coach. And so I was working through it and learning what is authenticity for me. What does that look like? And so as we moved through each limitation, each fear and everything, it got to a point where I just said, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to take these classes. I'm doing it to change. And she said, that's a very expensive way to do it. You know you could do it for free. You could just change. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I'm not doing it. It's not happening. Because for me, I knew if I took those classes, if I did the work with each class, I would see a change. I would release the stuff that was in the way. And as a result, I went through a grieving process every quarter because it was like, oh my God, who am I? Who is this person? I was different. And here it is, 10 years later, I'm a new me. I'm no longer the same person. And so it just, in me processing it all, it reminded me of the story of Christ. A few years ago, I kept feeling I needed to sit with the idea of Christ going through carrying the cross and the being persecuted part. And it was like, what is that? And at some point it was like, oh, I can identify with that. Because it was like, well, where do I criticize myself? Where do I allow other people's judgments to be on me? Where am I not allowing myself to be free? Where am I being tempted and all of that stuff? All the different things that the story says he experienced. And then I remembered, that's what I'm doing. I'm dying, my ego, releasing parts of me. I'm dying to be me. And I thought, I do love myself. I love myself enough to do the work, to go through releasing the limitations. And I ask, how much do you love yourself? How much do you love the people around you? To allow them to experience you, your true self, as well as creating an opening for them to be their best self. There's a motivational speaker, Derek Grant. He said, life is like fishing. When you cast a line, it's like you cast out the vision of the future that you want. And then you act as if it were already possible. And then you reel in the future as if it's happening now by being that present person now. I invite you to embark on your own journey of self-discovery and healing by allowing the ego to die, leading to more fulfilling and authentic life. Choose commitment over convenience. We are here to be ourselves, live our truth, and be the love that we are. And so it is.